It's my great pleasure to bring to the stage John Chisholm. John's one of our board members here at the Seasteading Institute, as well as being a trustee at the Santa Fe Institute. John's a serial entrepreneur who's been helping us a lot at Seasteading, and he's going to talk to you about ideas for communicating about seasteading to people who have never heard of it before, which is very important. Please welcome John.
Thank you, Patrick. Actually, all of you are going to volunteer your ideas for presenting the idea of seasteading to new audiences. So this will be an interactive session. So how do you talk about seasteading to a group of people who have never heard about it before? Of course, you have to size up your audience. If you're talking to fellow futurists or libertarians, we can take more liberties, and we can wax philosophically and long about cities of 10,000 people on the open seas. But I've also found that if you start out that way, talking to mainstreamers, and by mainstreamers I mean most Republicans and Democrats, it does not work. People dismiss the idea as crackpotish. So what is the best way to introduce mainstreamers in a way that gets them nodding with agreement? And so for the next few minutes, I'd like to solicit your ideas so we can all benefit from each other's experiences of communicating these ideas. To kick off the discussion, let me offer one possible way that I use to introduce seasteading if you have 2 or 3 minutes of somebody's time and attention. Here's what I say, and it's been very much influenced by Patri. When I think of government services, I think of TSA, the U.S. Postal Service, public school system. Governments are not very innovative, productive, or customer satisfaction oriented, are they? No. But that's not surprising. Shouldn't be, because they're monopolies. So to fix this, we need to introduce competition and choice into governments and government services at all levels. So how do we do that? Well, the simple and most direct way is through issuing competitive bids for or privatizing government services, for example, trash collection or highway maintenance. Another way it happens is through competing jurisdictions, for example, when different cities, states, or countries compete for businesses or taxpayers. In Northern California, we see this, for example, in the city of Brisbane, attracting businesses away from San Francisco due to lower taxes and a more favorable business climate. Still another way is to create new jurisdictions that provide still more choice and competition to existing governments. Hong Kong is one such example on land, and the global free cities movement aims to create more Hong Kong-like pockets of growth and high standards of living throughout the world. And a still further way is new jurisdictions on the sea, which covers 70% of the Earth's surface. These new entities are called seasteads. And today they're mostly businesses that grow food, generate power, provide medical and other services. In the future, they'll include communities and cities that enable people to choose, experiment with, and discover how to optimize freedom and the rule of law. And we're seeing just the first technological, legal, and political steps towards that happening today. So that's one way of introducing the idea of seasteads to someone very gradually in kind of a step-by-step way, if you have a minute or two of their time and attention. Well, now I'd like to open it up to you. What are your thoughts on the best way to introduce seasteading to somebody who's hearing about it for the first time? And it needn't be as long and detailed as that. It could be just 15 or 20 seconds even. Yes, Mark.
I would argue that the low-hanging fruit is actually introducing seasteading to libertarians, because libertarians already agree with us that there are fundamental problems with how the government operates. So next week, Ron Paul is going to lose the Republican primary, and we're going to have a lot of people who are going to be wondering what do they do on behalf of liberty, because they've been spending the last 6 months knocking on doors, stuffing envelopes, and making phone calls on behalf of Ron Paul. Or maybe they're working in the Libertarian Party or whatever. And I think we need to make the argument that, number one, we are never going to politically change the United States into a libertarian country because it's a marginal view that only about 2 or 3% of us hold. And then second, there's a unity of theory and practice. Our theory is non-coercion and acting independently and seceding when we disagree. The practice is seasteading. So I think we have a vast audience of thousands and thousands of people who've been mobilized by Ron Paul and others, and reaching out to them and getting them involved is a very profitable opportunity for us. And the main problem I think we have to answer then is, what do they do on behalf of seasteading? So I've had this conversation with people and they go, well, I don't really have business experience, I don't know how to start a new business, so what do I do? How do I help the seasteading movement? And I think that's a question that I'd love to have some help in answering.
Okay, so reaching out to libertarians first is one suggestion that I heard you mention, Mark.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think if we have to sell an audience on libertarianism before we sell them on seasteading, then we've automatically lost. I think some other lower hanging fruit might be these immediate business models that we've been talking about. Say we're pitching the idea of a med stead. Healthcare in the US is really expensive because there's lots of overhead and paperwork. But people don't want to go overseas for that because they're afraid of getting hacked up by some doctors in India or China. What if you could provide high quality, medical care for a low cost off the coast of LA on a cruise ship? I mean, you can just say like small things like that are ideas that someone already agrees with the idea. Yeah, health and medical care is too expensive, we should change that. Or immigration law is screwed up, we should change that. You have to find something they already agree with.
So focus on a specific application first that they're likely to be well disposed towards. Yes, sir.
In addressing the average Republican and Democrat, which I think was, I don't know what you meant that to be one of the terms of the question, but in looking at it politically, even the average Democrat and Republican is well aware of the difficulty in producing the changes that we need in our current political system. And I presented it as an instrument to make that change. And it's really well received. And then beyond that, I think that, of course, seasteading offers the opportunities to provide people with all kinds of stuff that they want, that they can't get, or things that are rare that can become plentiful. But I think that's the economic argument is one thing, and the political argument, I think, is legitimately addressed by a solution to the loggerheads that we have in the political process today.
So a new way to try out changes.
A new way to produce the changes. A new way to produce the changes that almost everyone, Democrat, Republican, or otherwise, is looking to have changed, that they know and they want to, are looking for.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
A point I made yesterday, when you want to roll this out to the really broad public, a point you could make is that the United States has been a grain exporting nation. We're one of 3 in the world. It's been a source of soft diplomacy. That's scheduled to end in 2015. We are running out of food, meaning we don't have enough to export. If we don't go to the sea, we will not even be able to feed ourselves. So this, I think Neil was the one who said, and forgive me if it wasn't Neil, somebody said, these are the prairies. You start with farms and villages and they grow to towns and cities. And one way that you might make this popular with broad spectrum folks is to say, we don't have enough room to grow our food. We've got to go to the ocean.
Thank you. Yes.
I just want to second that. I looked up the. Oh, I'm sorry. I was so impressed by the feed ratio of the fish in the net in the free-floating system. When it becomes a 1-to-1 or 1.6 to 1, it is 16 pounds of grain to produce 1 pound of meat, and an ungodly amount of fresh water. And as long as I have the microphone, I don't know how to frame this exactly, but Nishant was talking about the impact of cell phones and technology in Africa, and there might be a page to be taken from the book of an organization called One Laptop Per Child. I'm sure many of you have heard of it, but the point is that if you buy one of those, in the Western world, you're paying $300. Why? Because it actually only costs $150, but you're giving another one to a child in Peru or in Africa. So, again, I don't know exactly how to frame this, but to not be seen as elitist, like this is economically inelastic selection of cosmetic or whatever therapy, for people who do go to a seasteading site for elective surgery, you might suggest that a certain portion of that be set aside for veterans. Thank you.
Okay. We have time for 2 or 3 more suggestions. Yes, sir.
Yes, I was going to suggest also that, downplay the political aspects and focus on the benefits that everyone can agree to, which people have already been kind of saying. So again, it's like 70% of the Earth's surface is like one big solar collector. We can use it for several kinds of renewable energy, and also the food production, both the kelp farming, seaweed and agriculture food, are easy to sell to almost anyone. And I think once we open the new frontier, the rest will follow, because the freedom will be there, even though we're not promoting that as the main objective.
If I may piggyback off of that, just focusing on the technologies that we've heard about today is a very neutral way to introduce the idea of seasteading to people. Yes?
I would stress that conservatives and progressives share the same values. They both care about the poor, they both care about sustaining peace, they both want prosperity for their children. They would both want profit and human flourishing, they just have different methods. And they both agree that it's not working out through the political process, so we need startups out of the ocean. You go straight to the values people share, you just bypass all the disagreements. That's one way to do it.
Great. Yes?
Another way you could use, it's almost like targeting an individual person to get involved with seasteading is to first talk about the problems that society today is having that could be paralleled by seasteading. So that could depend on what you say, depending on the person, their political beliefs, and whatever. Then you pause and switch over to the solutions of that problem, and then you close it by specifically addressing how seasteading can link and solve the problems that society is having. And that way, no matter what the person's political beliefs, they've realized the problems, they've seen the solutions, and they've seen the method in which to go about doing it. And in that way, we can most effectively, I don't want to say recruit, but recruit people to the cause.
Are you saying let the other person suggest the problem or a problem and then talk about how seasteading might address that?
More of let them figure it out. You say, oh, these are some problems. Oh, these are some solutions. Oh, and then there's this really cool way of doing this. It's called seasteading. And then they figure it out. And it's like a moment. And it just clicks.
Great, thank you. Any other comments before we conclude? All right, give yourself a round of applause for some great ideas. Thank you.